Werewolves. Do they really exist? According to hundreds, maybe even thousands of eyewitnesses, yes, they do. But probably not in the way you're thinking. I'm not talking about a man that turns into a monster under the light of the full moon and prowls the forest and streets looking for helpless victims. The lunar cycle has nothing to do with it. These creatures have been encountered at night and in the middle of the day, at dawn and at dusk, when the moon is full and when it's nowhere to be found. Most witnesses only use the term werewolf because that's what this creature looks like. Dogman is actually the popular term for these creatures, or upright canines, which is a term coined by the late Linda Godfrey, who was the foremost researcher on the Dogman phenomenon. She's written several books, including Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America. That one is on my paranormal bookshelf. And that's where I first read about Anthony Chaney's encounter, the first person I ever got into contact with regarding a Dogman sighting, and was shocked at the things that he told me, opening my eyes to the world where these creatures actually exist. Since then, I've gotten a little obsessed. If you're one of my creatures of the night that have subscribed to my channel, you'll know that Dogman is my favorite cryptid to share stories about. Since I've learned of their existence, I've spoken with scores of eyewitnesses, and they have shared their encounters with me. And in turn, I share them with you. But before we talk about any of those encounters, and in case you aren't familiar with what a Dogman is, I wanted to give you a paranormal report on this creature. That way you know exactly what a Dogman is, and what these people that have been encountering them since at least 1887 have witnessed. 1887 is the first encounter that was reported in Michigan, giving birth to the legend of the Michigan Dogman. So picture this, a 6 to 10 foot tall bipedal monster, massive muscles, long arms. In fact, one witness describes them as the longest arms he's ever seen. These arms end in hands that dozens upon dozens of witnesses say resemble a raccoon's hands, or hands that are capable of holding onto roadkill, fences, or even opening doors. Some people even describe them as human hands that end in claws. Most witnesses agree that their heads look like a giant wolf or German shepherd, very canine, with triangular ears on the tops of their heads, long muzzles, and self-illuminating eyes that can range in color from the typical amber to red, orange, green, and even blue. Their fur comes in a wide range of colors too, from jet black to grayish black, smoky gray, light gray, brown, and tan, even a mix of those colors, making them appear like wolves or German shepherds. Their fur can range from short to shaggy, and some of them even have long fur on the backs of their necks and shoulders that resemble manes. They have tails and walk digitigrade, meaning they walk on their toes instead of flat-footed. The most disturbing thing about these creatures, though, is that so many people have witnessed them walking on their hind legs. They seem to be able to shift back and forth between 2 and 4 legs with ease, and in some cases that I've heard, they can even do so in mid-sprint. Some witnesses describe a popping sound like cracking knuckles when they shift from 4 legs to 2. No matter which way they run, 2 legs or 4, they are remarkably fast. Some witnesses even say they move so fast it's hard to make out anything other than a blur, and can't give any proper details. There's a video captured in Florida where a witness claims to have captured a Dogman on camera, but this thing moves so quickly you can't tell what the hell it is. I'll put a link to where you can watch that in the description of this video. These creatures also appear to be highly intelligent, possibly even capable of higher thought than most other animals, maybe even being self-aware. They seem to be able to open doors, recognize firearms, and even set sophisticated traps. They can travel in pairs or groups, and they also have a distinct form of communication, using yips, grunts, and barks to communicate with each other. But the most terrifying noise they can make is the scream that can rip through the night and send chills down your spine. One witness even describes this howl as the exact howl from the movie An American Werewolf in London, which sounds just like this. If I heard that, I'd probably die. Nowadays, when I speak to witnesses that have heard the howls and screams, I direct them to this audio clip to see if this is what they've heard. And more often than not, they tell me it's exactly what they heard. In an episode that I presented called Werewolf Woods, a young woman was stalked by a pair of dogmen for 2 nights while she was camping alone. On the second night, she actually saw these creatures in the forest. And to her, it seemed one of them was causing a distraction while the smaller one was actually crawling up behind her for what she believes was a sneak attack. Usually, these dogmen are accompanied by 2 things. A horrible smell described as a mixture of wet hair, blood, rotten meat, and urine. And an intense fear or uneasiness that comes over you before the dogman is even seen. Maybe this is our instincts telling us to get out of the area. Testimonies from police officers, army rangers, security guards, and wildlife officials who risk their lives daily have said they've never felt fear like they did during their encounters. A lot of people also talk about this sort of static charge in the air when the dogman is around, almost like the dogman brings some sort of supernatural energy with it. That could help the theory that these beings are from another dimension. Maybe that static charge is a side effect from interdimensional travel. But of course, the dogman being from another dimension is just one of numerous theories about origins. They've been sighted all over the world though. Lots of times, right here in the United States, where most sightings that I present take place. Most of these sightings occur in and around forested areas and levee systems. Several researchers that I've talked to and are dedicated to dogman phenomenon and study their behavior believe they use these levee systems as a way to travel. Places like Michigan, Mississippi, Ohio, and Wisconsin are among the states with the highest amount of encounters. Places like Elkhorn, Michigan, Wexford County, Wisconsin, Taylor, Mississippi, and Germantown, Ohio seem to be hotbeds for dogman activity, but that doesn't mean other places aren't infested too. There's places in California that have seen them all over the place, and several areas of forest in Kentucky where these dogmen are seen frequently, including the land between the lakes. I've spoken with several people from an unknown area in the United States that seems to have more encounters than anywhere else, and they actually use terms like Dogman Town to describe where they live. Wherever this takes place, it seems the activity picks up in the fall, where they call it Dogman September, or simply Monster Season. I don't know where this takes place. Out of respect for the people trusting me with their stories, I don't ask. I learned a long time ago that sometimes these details should be left out. All I know is they are not in Mississippi. Another YouTube narrator, Dark Waters, has several stories on his channel out of Taylor, Mississippi, another hotbed for these creatures, and he even encountered something there himself. In his episode called The Siege of Lockett Ranch, he recounts an eyewitness testimony from a man whose farm was attacked by a pack of these creatures on several occasions, ultimately leading to the family fleeing for their lives. I highly recommend this episode, and a link for that will also be in the description of this video. Taylor, Mississippi also seems to have a history of animal mutilations and strange animal droppings found around the area. I've talked with at least 2 people that have shared their encounters with me from this area, and they too claim that this area is a hotbed for the dogman. The Germantown werewolf was also a strange upright creature seen in Defiance, Ohio. In 1972, several eyewitnesses came forth describing what they called a werewolf. It was described as a 6-foot-tall, dark gray, bipedal werewolf-like creature with glowing red eyes. It was, allegedly, even seen carrying a plank of wood in its front paws. It was described as having an almost human-like intelligence, and the apparent ability to use tools like a human. I've never personally encountered a story where these creatures use tools, but nothing is out of the realm of possibility when it comes to something as peculiar as the dogman. The first sighting of the Germantown werewolf was on July 25, 1972. A man named Ted Davis, who was a train crewman, claimed that he was working on the Norfolk and Western train lines when he saw 2 huge hairy paws on the ground in front of him. He saw a 6-foot-tall dog-like creature carrying a large wooden board. The Dogman then attacked Ted with the board and ran off into the woods incredibly fast. On July 30th, Ted saw the same creature again, but this time he wasn't alone. His co-worker, a man named Tom Jones, was there, and both men witnessed the Dogman lurking in the bushes. Soon after that, though, the Dogman ran from the bushes and back into the woods once again, and the two men filed a police report, concerned for the safety of the town. Another train crewman reported seeing the Dogman around 3 a.m., and a motorist witnessed it running in front of his car at 4 a.m. before disappearing. A grocery store clerk also claimed to see a wolf-like creature while driving home from a late shift. There's been other sightings of the werewolves in Ohio too, which to me shows that there's at least a possibility to the idea that there could be some kind of yet-to-be-classified bipedal wolf creature lurking in the woods. Germantown, Ohio also had an encounter in broad daylight where a group of women witnessed the beast looking into the window of a salon that they were in. Apparently, this creature had its face pressed against the glass of the front window, watching them, and even licked the glass before taking off, leaving all of the women in the shop horrified. Dogmen appear to be incredibly strong, being able to lift full-grown bucks and hogs and carrying them off to a gruesome fate. One witness, a mayor's wife, also in Ohio, claims that something that resembled a werewolf actually picked up the back of her car one night as she drove home. The creature ripped the back door from the car with ease before she was able to finally get out of there. Another reason people believe these creatures are so intelligent is they have, on occasion, been reported to mark their territory by leaving deer heads or other animals on tree branches, pikes they've put into the ground, or even vehicles or porches. Sometimes they travel alone, other times they've been seen traveling in pairs or packs. Juveniles have been seen playing together, usually wrestling or chasing each other, perhaps a way to learn to hunt and fight. They're also often spotted with or around packs of coyotes, and some researchers and witnesses alike say they like to use the coyotes when they travel, but the reasons why are still unknown. To me, the scariest thing about these creatures is that bullets seem to have little to no effect on them. There's dozens of reports from hunters that have encountered them where they've shot the creature and are 100% positive that they hit the animal in the chest or other body parts only to have the creature continue to come at them or act like nothing happened. A researcher named Brenton Sawin spoke with a man once that shared the experience that he had with a Dogman one night. A friend of his had called them in hysterics, wanting to come over to his house. When he arrived, he proceeded to tell them that he shot a Dogman at close range with his rifle, and he knows for a fact that he hit it in the chest. This shot had little effect on the monster. In fact, the creature just turned around and headed back into the woods, seemingly pissed off. The man was scared that it would come back and attack. When he did go home, that exact thing happened, and the man was never seen again. Brenton himself passed away a while back now, but this encounter has always stuck with me as one of the scarier ones that I've ever heard. Maybe I'll find that episode and present it in his honor. While all the encounters with Dogmen are terrifying, most of them end without any significant harm done, but the psychological effects can last a lifetime. Some encounters are completely benign, where a hiker or camper comes face to face with them and ends with the Dogman going back into the forest. Others are scarier, like when the Dogman gives chase or gets caught looking through a window. And then others are completely horrifying, like the woman that was stalked in the forest and hunted by the pair of Dogman. Or Danielle Stedman's encounter. She was trapped in a car with a friend while one of those beasts was trying to get in. If you want to hear one of the scariest Dogman encounters out there, I urge you to listen to hers. I had the honor of being able to present her encounter right here on this channel, and the link is going to be in the description. You can also hear her interview on Dogman Encounters Radio with Vic Cundiff. That's episode 83, called Eye to Eye with a Killer. I've known Danielle for some time now, and we've spoken about her encounter. You can actually still hear the fear in her voice from that night. It seems most of the time these creatures just enjoy terrorizing and terrifying the poor witnesses. There's been so many cases where they've been encountered out in the forest and have charged the witness only to end that charge in a bluff and head back into the forest. Some people believe that the fear we feel around them gives them power, or that they feed on that fear. In episodes 86 and 87 of Dogman Encounters Radio, Vic interviews a couple out of Oklahoma that encounter a dogman, or maybe even dogmen, on a regular basis. They've experienced everything from something trying to turn their doorknob, something moving around outside of their home, a neighbor's dog being ripped apart, and even a full-fledged sighting only a few feet away. The husband describes what he saw one night as the werewolf from the movie Bad Moon. Even this couple's numerous encounters have ended with no harm. Skeptics of these creatures say that they're misidentifications of bears and wolves standing on their hind legs. But Anthony Cheney was parked in front of a dogman, getting a detailed look. What he saw was no bear, and it was no wolf. In my opinion, these witnesses encountered something that changed their lives forever. And many of them are avid outdoorsmen, experienced campers or hunters that know the forest and all of its animals. They can identify them and their tracks. Many of these witnesses have been too close to these creatures to misidentify it as a bear or wolf on its hind legs. We have police officers, game wardens, hunters, farmers, experienced outdoorsmen, college students, and just your average everyday people running into these creatures. There's just too many encounters for all of them to be hoaxes or misidentifications. Even Native Americans have stories going back hundreds of years talking about them. Something is definitely out there in the woods, and whether it's an undiscovered species, a supernatural creature, or something else is still a mystery. But according to thousands of eyewitnesses, upright canines with the ability to make you feel fear that you've never experienced are very real. I know I believe that there's something out there going bump in the night. But what about you? Delving further into the dogman phenomenon, we'll show you that there are even different species or different types of these dogmen. 7 of them, to be exact. These have been reported by numerous people, and I'll do my best to explain those 7 types. But before I do, though, I feel that I need to make the distinction that while Dogman is a separate entity from werewolves, the belief that werewolves exist is very real. To distinguish between a werewolf and a dogman, there are 2 distinct characteristics to watch out for. The first being the presence or lack of a tail. It's believed that werewolves have no tails, whereas dogman encounters have been described as having creatures with a tail. The second thing to look for is the way that their feet rest on the ground. We all know that dogman stands digigrade, like all canines do. They rest their weight on the toes of their feet instead of their whole foot. Werewolves are believed to be the opposite. They stand flat-footed, and their legs appear very human-like. One other factor that's a common belief is the aggression level. While some individual dogmen have been hostile, such as the beast of the land between the lakes tends to be, most dogmen simply scare and run, or even seem curious. But the common belief of werewolves is that they are very dangerous, and will kill when they have the opportunity. Classifying and sorting dogmen into different types can get confusing at times, especially since some of the type 3s can actually resemble what in the cryptid community we say werewolves look like. But I'll do my best to explain them. To start things off, there are 2 categories of dogmen, which are actually called type 3 and canine. The canine type is more wolf-like, the kind you typically hear about. Variant 3 is actually called this because of their similar appearance to a Sasquatch type 3, which is also known as a Gugwi. Personally, I don't even think that the type 3 dogman should be classified as dogman at all. They should be part of the Gugwi family, or some other type of Sasquatch classification. But what do I know? I'll list them here anyways, and you can be the ones to decide. In my investigations, research, and conversations with witnesses, though, I've only ever heard them describe the canine-type dogman. If they describe the things listed in the Type 3 category, I simply jot it down as a Sasquatch encounter, because they're so hard to distinguish. Most eyewitnesses to these types of creatures also describe them as Sasquatch anyway. But the Type 3 dogman have 3 different variants. So we have Dogman Type 3 Variant 1, Type 3 Variant 2, and Type 3 Variant 3. These creatures look Sasquatch-like, but have longer muzzles than a Sasquatch is known to have. Their muzzles are more canine-like instead of primate-like. They have similar appearance to an overgrown baboon, though. The variant 1 looks like a mixture of a canine dogman and a Sasquatch, with a snout that is more pronounced than a primate snout, but still not as pronounced as a canine muzzle. Picture the snout of a baboon. A longer snout than a Sasquatch, gorilla, or even us humans, but still shorter than a canine snout. These guys also have long canine ears, which also set them apart from Sasquatch. Their legs are not digitigrade though. These guys are flat-footed. They're also described as tall, lean, and strong, with a baboon-like head. Variant 2 are similar in appearance to Variant 1, with the exception of the muzzle. As you can tell, all the variants of Type 3 are distinguished by the appearance of their muzzle. So Variant 2 have long canine muzzles, but still lack those digitigrade legs, meaning these guys are flat-footed too, and they're described as having a hominid body with a chow-like head. Now I suppose either of these variants might be what people are calling a werewolf. They do have a human-like leg appearance, but a canine-like head, and they have been described as having an ornery disposition. So if a werewolf is aggressive, and this Type 3 is aggressive, maybe they're one and the same. But I do truly think that these creatures are in a category of their own though, and these Type 3 variants should just be listed in the hominid section. And then we have the Type 3 variant, which is only described as a Sasquatch with a muzzle. So this dude is a flat-footed, primate-like monster with a longer muzzle than a typical Sasquatch. Most of the specimens of Type 3 have been reported to be around 6 to 9 feet tall. Moving on to the canine-type dogman is the one that we're most familiar with, and the type that all the encounters that I've presented are described as. These are the terrifying ones that chase you, stalk you, terrorize you, and sometimes even kill you. We have 4 variants in this category. They're simply known as Canine Variant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Variant 1 looks like a wolf that's walking upright. This is the one that Linda Godfrey coined the term upright canine for. Basically, it just appears to be a wolf walking on its hind legs, with the front limbs appearing to be bent with an obvious paw instead of hands. This variant is typically smaller than the other 3 in this category, and have been described as a timber wolf walking like a man. Variant 2 looks more like a hyena than a wolf, with the sloping back, reddish color, and blunter snout. They do stand digitigrade, just like the other ones in this category, but they have a different pattern on their fur, most likely to help them blend in, and when they stand on 4 legs, they have a sloping back. Their ears seem to be more rounded than the other variants of this group, and they have a mouth full of pointed fangs. Variant 3 is the one that we're most familiar with. The stereotypical Hollywood werewolf, like the one from Van Helsing or The Howling. They can be anywhere from 6 to 12 feet tall. They have hands instead of paws on the front limbs, and they use those hands to grab onto prey or open doors. They have a pronounced canine muzzle, tall ears, and bushy tail. They're very muscular. They have very broad shoulders and an exaggerated arm length. The last type of dogman is Variant 4, which has been dubbed the soldier because of the sheer size of these creatures. They seem to be even bigger than Variant 3. They have heads too large for their bodies and are extremely large in muscle proportion. So there you have it. All the different types of dogman that can be encountered. For now. We've heard of a few of the Variant 2 or hyena types, but most of the time though, I think what people are encountering are the 3rd and 4th variants. The ones that look like the werewolves in the movies that we watch. More often than not, the people that I talk to describe the dogman that they encounter as resembling a stereotypical werewolf. They talk about the giant wolf head and describe the bushy tail. They point out the canine-like legs and the overall sense that these things are some type of upright canine. When I exchange emails with witnesses, I try to get them to be as specific as possible and ask questions about these appearances based off of what I know, and it helps me determine if they saw a dogman or other things that people can consider a werewolf. I'll ask them questions about the head and what the snout and ears look like. I'll also ask them if they know it had a tail or not, since all 4 of these canine-type Dogman variants are described as having a tail. Another important trait I ask the witness that I talk to is how these creatures stood, and whether or not they were standing on their toes or their feet. When we look back through history, every culture has their own tales of the paranormal. Maybe they're real. Maybe these are stories made up to explain things that haven't been discovered yet, or possibly even tales to tell children to keep them in line. But the legends of werewolves, the loup-garou, the rougarou, shapeshifters, and even skinwalkers have been told by native tribes, fur trappers, and explorers from dozens and dozens of cultures all over the globe, longer than we've even had the written word. But the very first documented account that I can find of a Dogman comes from Michigan, and this is the one that gave birth to the legend of the Michigan Dogman. But once this encounter was made public, more and more people started coming forward throughout the world. So now that we've discussed what a Dogman is, and even broken down the different types of Dogman that people have witnessed, let's move on to some of the more specific cases. There are certain places in the United States where legends of the Dogman have made the area infamous. I'm talking about the places like the land between the lakes, Bray Road in Wexford County, Wisconsin, Elkhorn, Michigan. Like I've stated a few times, these areas are considered hotspots for Dogman activity. For one reason or another, these upright canines like to frequent these areas, and modern sightings even go back over 100 years in some of these places. Another place that I've heard numerous encounters from is the Daniel Boone National Forest. Eyewitnesses that have been hiking or camping there have had encounters that range from watching one at the water's edge, to seeing one watching them from a tree, to even being chased through the woods. The Daniel Boone National Forest is in Kentucky, just like the land between the lakes and the murderous beast that roams those woods. It seems that the American Midwest is a favorite hunting ground for these canines. When you add all of these encounters together, just from these few areas, the encounters quickly build up to an astonishing number. One of my favorite theories about places like this is that these areas are experiencing what's called the thinning of the veil, where the fabric that separates realities is thinner, allowing creatures like the Dogman to traverse to and from our own dimension. I'll share all of the encounters and information on these places that I could gather. You tell me what you think of them, and why you think these animals are so drawn to these certain areas. The Beast of Bray Road, the Michigan Dogman, and the Beast of the Land Between the Lakes are the most well-known dogmen in the paranormal community. These are the accounts that witnesses have come forth with, both anonymously and publicly. Wexford County, 1887. 2 lumberjacks encountered what they assumed to be a big wolf or a big dog, but soon realized it was something else entirely. They described this thing as having the torso of a man but the head of a dog or a wolf. They chased it with their guns until it hid inside a big hollow log, and then these lumberjacks proceeded to start poking it with sticks, hoping that it would come out. The Dogman then let out an ear-piercing howl and leapt out of the log before taking off out of sight. When it comes to the Dogman phenomenon, not many sightings can live up to the popularity of the Michigan Dogman. He's described just like most dogmen. Tall, reaching at least 7 feet, amber-colored eyes, or maybe even blue eyes. Fitting the description of most movie werewolves, except we all know that he's no werewolf, merely a cryptid that resembles one. And like most Dogman sightings, the Michigan Dogman can move at incredibly fast speeds on his hind legs. Their howls are said to be an unnatural noise, almost like a human scream mixed with a roar. Of course, there are legends about him. Some Native American tribes in the area he's spotted in, like the Ottawa Chippewa tribe and the Ho-Chunk tribe, each have their own legends. The Ottawa believe they're skinwalkers stuck in between the forms that they're shifting into, while the Ho-Chunk believe they're visitors from another realm that can take physical form here. Some folks that live in the area say he's allegedly seen in 10-year cycles. Non-believers claim it's a misidentification. And some religious friends of my own even claim that he's a demon. He's been said to be a skinwalker, a cryptid, an alien being, an undiscovered natural creature, even a visitor from another dimension. And of course, there's some people that say he's just a hoax. Sightings of the Michigan Dogman are as diverse as possible, though. Law enforcement officials, everyday people, adults, children, hunters, farmers, no demographic doesn't have a representative in a Dogman encounter like this. Being more of a Mulder than a Scully myself, though, I believe there is something out in the woods that is either being hidden from us or hiding from us on its own. There's just too many sightings all over the world for creatures like this to be one big elaborate hoax. Something is out in the woods. Chances are you won't ever find him in your lifetime, but then again, you might just be one of those unfortunate souls that emails me your encounter if you go into the woods in the middle of the night. Sightings of the Michigan Dogman usually take place around the Manistee National Forest, the shores of Lake Michigan, and Kalamazoo. But they also migrate north into Wisconsin, and south into Illinois. And there have actually been more reported sightings of Dogman-type creatures than there have been Sasquatch sightings. As the sightings migrated from Michigan and spread all over the world, most of their characteristics stayed the same, while some minor aspects, like the color of their fur and the eyes, have been reported to vary. But this can easily be explained by migrating animals adapting to their environment. Linda Godfrey, the undisputed leader of the pack when it comes to Dogman and their history, has said it's fully canine, walks on its hind legs, uses its forearms to carry chunks of roadkill or deer carcasses. They have pointed ears on the tops of their heads, and they have big fangs, bushy tails, and walk tellingly digitigrade or on their toe pads, as all canines do. And that's something that a human in a fursuit can't really duplicate. In the late 1930s, Robert Fortney saw the Dogman when he was fishing in the Muskegon River near Paris, Michigan. He spotted what looked like a normal pack of dogs charging out of the forest and fired his gun at these wild things in hopes of scaring them off. And to his pleasure, it worked, and they all ran off. But he soon noticed that one big one actually stayed behind. This one was big and black, and then it stood up on hind legs, and they stared each other down. He said the eyes of the beast were glowing blue. He fired another shot in the direction of the Dogman, and it finally took off into the woods to join its pack. In 1961, a night watchman at a manufacturing plant in the middle of Big Rapids in Chippewa Lake encountered the Dogman too. It was about 3 a.m. and he witnessed something moving around near one of the fences. Knowing whoever it was out of place, he continued to investigate. But he soon realized it was not a person at all. It was too tall, and it was covered in brownish-gray fur. Whatever it was very muscular and very big, and it would walk around on 4 legs for a while, and then stand up on 2 legs and keep walking around. After a few more minutes, it dropped to all 4s and walked into the forest. Then in the early 60s, a woman saw something she'll never forget while she was riding in her car down the interstate between Kalamazoo and Battle Creek. What she saw was a pack of 4 to 6 large gray creatures that she said resembled werewolves. And then these werewolf-like creatures ran across the interstate across both directions of traffic and into the woods on the other side. She's noted as saying that these things moved incredibly fast. In 1977, 2 brothers were riding trail bikes in the Manistee National Forest when one brother stopped to wipe his face and noticed a shaggy furred face staring at him from about 7 feet off the ground. They made eye contact, and the creature fled into the woods. He described the creature as shaggy with black fur, standing upright on its hind legs, arms longer than a human's would be, and he was sure that this specimen was male and not female. The odd thing about this encounter, though, was that he noticed dark red fur around its ankles. And then in 1986, another sighting happened by a man named Ray Greenway. He was driving home late one night and noticed something dark moving in the field next to him. He saw eye reflections as the beam hit whatever it was that was out in the field, and out of nowhere, this thing charged at his car and jumped across the 2-lane road. He said it was like nothing he'd ever seen. Nothing he knows could leap like that. And he also stated that he could tell that whatever it was looking right at him while it was in that field. Sometime during the 70s, in a place called Alpena, 3 teenagers described the creature that they saw as a big dog running behind them on a trail. All 3 of them were in a canoe at the time. They heard the big dog splash into the water, and soon realized it was swimming straight for them. At first, it was swimming into the water, but soon rose up on its hind legs and started wading towards them. They saw the chest and forelimbs clearly sticking out of the water as this thing loomed towards them. They decided that now was the perfect time to make their escape and got the hell out of there before it was too late. In 1987, 3 friends were staying in a cabin in Sparta, 20 minutes north of Grand Rapids. When 2 of them were coming back from dinner, they encountered a Dogman too. They first noted it on the side of the road, and they too thought it was a person, but only at first. They both got a really good look at this thing. It was standing on 2 legs and covered in gray fur. It was man-sized, but had the head and face of a wolf. They described it as something out of a horror movie. It snarled at them, raised its hands as it went by, but they were both too scared to stop. Now, of course, you can just chalk this up to your average Dogman encounter, right? Up to this point it is, but here's the gut punch. They drove away from this thing, and soon passed the Welcome to Sparta sign. It was downtown Main Street. They were still heading towards the cabin. Then a couple of minutes later, to their confusion, they passed by the same sign again. They didn't turn around. There wasn't a second sign. It was like they went back in time or got transported back to that sign. Needless to say, they couldn't explain that. What would cause the time warp? Dogman isn't associated with time loss or anything like that. Was it just a supernatural coincidence, or is that Sparta area one of the hotbeds of paranormal activity too? In 1993, in Reed City, a teenage girl by Todd Lake was sneaking a cigarette near her parents' barn when something moving caught her attention. It was looking straight at her. She described it as dark in color, over 6 feet tall, huge pointed ears and a pointed nose, and it had the overall appearance of a dog or wolf. She grabbed a flashlight to investigate, but by the time she got into the barn, it was gone. She went back into the house after she realized it might still be hanging around and didn't really want to run into this thing. And then later, she talked to a neighbor that had an encounter of her own. She said she saw the same type of creature in a barn, and it looked like a dog but the size of a buffalo. She was panicked for days, and her father even went out searching for this thing with his guns but never found anything. Another encounter happened in 1994, in Watersmeet, where a teenager first noticed the telltale signs of something predatory in the area. There were no nature sounds. Often enough, these dogmen come with that phenomenon. When wherever they are, everything goes completely silent. She thought at first that she'd caught sight of a deer and laid low to watch, but then realized that this was no deer. She then thought it was a bear, but again realized it was no bear. It looked like a huge dog or wolf, but the face was wrong. That face looked more like a coyote. It was then that this thing stretched out its forearms and rose to 2 legs, and that's when she finally realized that what she was looking at was nothing that she'd ever seen before. It walked on those 2 legs for 5 or 6 steps before returning to all 4s and then going back into the woods. In autumn of 2001, a woman and her stepdaughter encountered the Dogman at their home in southwest Michigan. They saw this creature walking up a hill behind their home, and it was on all 4s and looked like it was stalking something. She described it as black with the body of a big bear and the head of a wolf. She also said it looked like a werewolf to her. And that same night, she could hear what she assumes was this beast splashing around in the swamp and screaming loudly and hysterically. The next encounter happened in Reed City again, but this one was far scarier and took place in 2006. A couple of college kids witnessed something moving in a wooded area at about 2:30 in the morning. At first, they all caught a glimpse of it. What they saw was the midsection and upper legs and one arm. It was something long and shaggy, and it was brown in color, and it was standing on 2 legs. Then they caught a glimpse of the face. It had a snout and yellow slanted eyes. They left the scene not wanting to witness anything further, but after a while, they decided to go back and investigate. It didn't take long for weird things to start happening, though. As they started hearing noises all around them, they realized it probably wasn't a good idea. Those noises were creepy enough to make them shiver, and then a motion light turned on from the building where they were scoping out, and something large could be heard running away very quickly. Another few minutes passed before they turned on their flashlights, and again they saw something large. It had yellow eyes, and it was staring right at them. The face they saw was flat and slender, and it didn't have a large dogman snout, but it didn't look human either. It had hair that resembled a mane. The head was kind of canine-shaped, but they couldn't tell if there was long ears on this creature or not. They were overcome by self-preservation at this point, saying they knew this thing wanted to harm them, so once again, they got out of there. As they were driving away this time, though, the creature started to chase them while on all fours until it eventually gave up. Also in 2006, 2 people were involved in an accident caused by the Dogman. It happened in Troy, Michigan. The driver states that a big dog was standing up on its hind legs, that it appeared out of nowhere and caused him to swerve. The car ended up flipping onto its side, but no one was hurt. I have that recording in the description of this video. Another incident happened in 2006 as well. Once again, somebody saw this creature as they drove down the road. Only this time, it was a man driving at night and saw a massive hand come over a hillside. And then this massive creature with a wolf-like head climbed over the hill. The man said the eyes reflected the lights and the creature sat on the hill and stared into the field before slowly turning its gaze towards him. In 2007, Bend in Michigan, on Cinder Road, a man was driving late one night and saw the reflections of eyes up ahead of him. First thinking it was a deer, he didn't realize it when he came into focus, but this thing was much larger and much darker than a deer. He continued to get closer to this thing and described what he saw as a dark-colored wolf that was standing on 2 legs. It was over 6 feet tall and next to a dead deer. He came to a stop. This thing was staring at him, not moving at all, and then it dropped to all fours and ran across the road into the forest. In 2009, a woman and her son saw the Dogman once again on the US 41. It ran in front of their car while they were near Tioga Creek. She described it as fast and strange. The front was higher than the back, like no animal she's ever seen. Once she learned of what a Dogman was, she looked it up and confirmed that that's what she saw. In 2011, it happened again. A man named Chuck had a run-in with the Dogman in Baraga County. As he drove down the street, it leapt out in front of him and across the road. He said it was fast, 3 strides, and it was gone. He's quoted as saying it was almost like it vanished through an invisible wall. He described this creature as jet black with a wolf snout and a face like a wolf too, but the back legs looked more like a muscular man. This one had no tail and was dead silent. This creature was also running on all fours. Of course, there's also things that make this legend even more popular, like the song, actually dubbed The Legend, that was given to us by Steve Cook in 1987, and of course the infamous Gable film of 2007. WTCM Radio in Traverse, Michigan, was the first to air the legend. It was part of an April Fool's Day prank, but soon after, people heard it and started talking about their own encounters with the Michigan Dogman. Steve Cook says that in the 30 years since the song debuted, he's heard of about 500 encounters with the Dogman, just in that area. There was a video that came out in 2007, claiming to have footage that showed proof that the Dogman actually existed. It's filmed on an 8mm camera, and is claimed to have been found in the attic and purchased at an estate sale. It starts with footage of someone driving around on a snowmobile, then a dude chopping wood, a dog running around outside, and the guy that was chopping wood working on his truck, and then footage of them driving down the road. All random, harmless stuff. But the last couple of seconds shows some kind of creature in the woods on all fours. When it charges at the camera, the man takes off. It appears that it catches him though, as you can see a flash of teeth, and then the film ends. This hit the internet with force, and for a while it was believed to be real. But then the filmmaker actually came forward and admitted that it was a hoax. And he even showed the ghillie suit that he used, and reenacted how to move around on all fours. So the Gable film was dismissed as nothing more than a hoax. But there are some people out there, the Mulders of the world, that believe a man couldn't move like that. it couldn't do the things that that creature did. And that the man that claimed to have filmed the hoax was working with someone or a group of someones to cover up the fact that it truly was authentic footage of a dogman. So what exactly is a dogman? Is there more than one in Michigan? Is there a pack of them? Because there's so many different descriptions, some with blue eyes, some with yellow eyes, some with red eyes. They can be gray, they can be black, they can be brownish gray. I think that there's more than one out there. Perhaps one day we'll figure it out. In the description of this video, you'll find links to the Gable film, Steve Cook's song, and the OnStar recording, as well as everything else that I've listed so far. Moving on from the Michigan Dogman, we'll go over to Wisconsin, and now speak about the Beast of Bray Road. The Beast of Bray Road, yet another one of America's most infamous cases of something that looks remarkably like a werewolf, but is something else entirely. This creature has been terrifying locals and unfortunate travelers in and around Elkhorn, Wisconsin since at least the late 1930s. But, just like all the other beasts on this episode, there's speculations of what they could be. A werewolf, a Sasquatch, an undiscovered species. This one is shrouded in as much mystery as all the other ones. But with the revelation of so many Dogman sightings, most eyewitnesses and researchers are leaning towards the belief that the Beast of Bray Road is actually another Dogman running loose on the back roads and lonely highways of Elkhorn and its neighboring communities. Whether you believe it's a Dogman, or a werewolf, or a Sasquatch, or something else entirely, it's up to you. But most people that have witnessed this creature can agree on this. Usually it's described as over 6 feet tall, well on 2 legs, and anywhere between 2 and 5 feet tall well on all 4s. This creature, just like all the other ones, is hairy, looking like a wolf or bear with grayish-brown fur and pointed ears. The paws actually look more like clawed hands or elongated paws, like the paws were stretched out, and on those paws are 3 long digits ending in claws. The estimated weight puts this thing around the 600 to 800 pound range. The eyes glow a yellow or amber color, and it can shift naturally back and forth between 2 and 4 legs. There's been numerous sightings of the beast crouching down on the side of the road and using these clawed hands to hold dead animals as it eats them. It's unknown if this Dogman has killed these creatures or if it's simply a scavenger taking advantage of a dead meal. As you can imagine though, coming face to face with this thing is just as scary as all the rest of them. It'd be terrifying whether or not your life is in danger. But to this day, there hasn't been any recorded fatalities by the beast or beasts of Bray Road. Most encounters are benign, but there are reports of aggressive behavior where the beast either charges at the person in question or jumps onto their car. Either way, if someone sees a 600-pound plus man-wolf running out at them, they're not going to stop and see what it really wants. Oddly enough, it's the creature itself that usually ends up running back into the forest to get away from us though. Because a lot of these sightings happen around land that's full of Native American history, there's theories out there that these creatures might actually be some kind of skinwalker or Native American spirit. But with so many sightings on the rise, and more coming towards us every single day, it's hard to believe that this is the case, at least in some places. There's also never been one single case of the beast being seen transforming from man to monster, or vice versa. Looking into the history of the Beast of Bray Road, you'll find the earliest reports of an encounter happened in the 1930s, but it wasn't until the 80s and 90s that these encounters really took off. The creature was sighted on Bray Road, hence the name the Beast of Bray Road, which was also coined by Linda Godfrey when she was given the case to report on. Back in 1991, scores of people were convinced that the beast was a manifestation of evil due to all the occult-oriented phenomenon that occurred a year prior. Over a dozen animals were found mutilated and dumped in ditches near Bray Road, on a road called Willow Road. Some animals had their hearts cut out, others had their throats slit, some were found with their legs bound together, and others were decapitated. The one thing that all of these deaths had in common were they were not natural, and they weren't an accident. Someone or something killed all of these poor animals on purpose. Once the word of these supposed occult sacrifices got out, the area was quickly covered up and further investigations were unable to be performed. To some people, it seemed that the local law enforcement knew what was going on and did everything in their power to cover it up. In 1970, in Washington County, Wisconsin, there was a group of teenagers on a camping trip in the middle of summer that witnessed the Dogman. It was around 10 o'clock at night or so. The wildlife around them went quiet, and they heard the sounds of something large coming in their direction. They could even hear the beast breathing, snarling, and puffing as this thing stepped on branches and cracked them. It started letting out what they could only describe as blood-curdling growls. Before it got close enough to reveal itself, though, they wisely decided that now might be the time to get out of there. They all believed that this creature was chasing them out of its territory. 3 years later, a teenager and his uncle were driving around at 11:30 p.m. and saw what they at first thought was a big dog. It was pawing at something on the ground and licking at it, but they realized it wasn't a dog when it stood up on its hind legs. They slowed the truck down, turned on the high beams, hoping to get a better look and figure out what this thing was. What they saw scared the teen so bad he couldn't even scream. He described it as a man, covered in short black fur, clearly well-muscled, with the head of a German shepherd or wolf, just like all the other accounts that describe these creatures the same way. Its eyes were yellowy orange in color, and it had well-muscled abdomen and thighs, and was definitely a male. They drove by it, but it leapt across the road in one stride. They drove to the truck yard where the uncle needed to turn in his delivery truck, and went back down the hill once again. When they neared the site where they encountered the Dogman, the uncle stopped the truck and grabbed his gun, eager to investigate. The teen, however, stayed back in the truck, too scared to go out there with his uncle. They didn't see the Dogman again, but they did find the carcass of a freshly killed deer, guts spilled out all over the place. In 1989, multiple encounters were reported. Heather Bowie witnessed the creature walking on two legs when she was 11 years old. She was outside playing with her mom, and she saw a large dog. And then, just like all these other sightings in Bray Road, this creature stood up on two legs. She said its back legs were oddly shaped and it was incredibly fast. To me, it seems the beast of Bray Road might actually prefer walking around on two legs because there's so many different sightings that say this creature showed people that it could walk on two legs. Also in 1989, a dairy farmer named Scott Bray reported a strange-looking dog that he said was in his pasture. He described it as having pointed ears, a hairy tail with long grayish-black fur. It was larger and taller than a German shepherd. He tried to track the large footprints that this thing left behind, but they disappeared into the grass. Around the same time, Russell Guest saw the Dogman too. He witnessed it emerge from a thicket on two legs. Russell began to run away and looked back at the creature, who was now on four legs but not giving chase. It took off in the other direction. He described it as 5 feet tall while on two legs, and it was covered in grayish-black fur, and was larger than a German shepherd as well. In 1990, another dairy farmer encountered the beast at 2 a.m. Mike Eaton saw a dark-haired dog-like creature near Hospital Road. It was sitting like a raccoon sits and eating something that it was holding with its hands. The creature looked back at him with a thick, wide head and a short snout. It was also covered in thick grayish-black fur and had muscular legs. February 1992, 10:30 p.m. on Highway H near Scott Bray's farm. His wife Tammy saw a large animal run across the road in front of her. Like the others, she described the creature as having brown and black fur and shining yellow eyes. It had pointed ears and a broad chest. It glanced at her, unaffected by her presence, and continued on its way. And then in 1996, in Holy Hills, 2 people witnessed not one but 2 creatures run across the road about 2 a.m. They described them as hairy, tall, and quick. Moving forward to 1999, on Bray Road itself, a woman named Lorianne Andreezy encountered the beast when she saw it kneeling on the side of the road. She was only 6 feet away from it on the passenger side, and she was able to get a great description. Grayish-brown hair, fangs, and pointed ears. His face was long and snouty like a wolf. His eyes were glowing yellow, even though they weren't reflecting the beams of her headlights. She said the chest was wide and the arms were strangely human, and they were jointed like a man's would be, with human hands that ended in claws. It was also holding onto something like a person would, with palms facing out. She said the legs were bent like a person's would be if they were kneeling. And she's quoted as saying, "It was so human-like that it was scary." Also in 1999, and also on Bray Road, a woman named Dorothy Gibson thought that she'd hit something on the road. When she got out to investigate, she saw a large creature on two legs racing towards her from the darkness of the night. She fled back into her car and tried to take off, but the dogman leapt onto her trunk. Thankfully, it was wet outside, and the creature couldn't hold on. She wasn't able to actually catch a glimpse of this creature, but from the outline of it, she described it as large and muscular. Like a man that continuously lifts weights, she said. In 2004, in October, a nurse, her 14-year-old daughter, and her daughter's 14-year-old friend saw the dogman at 8:30 p.m. on October 30th. The dogman was about 9 feet from them and lit up from the headlights of her car. They'd been driving up and down Bray Road a few times for the purpose of scaring the friend, when lo and behold, there the dogman was right in front of them. It just stepped out of the cornrows and looked at them in a very aggressive manner. The nurse said it had powerful muscular thigh muscles, and the legs were dog-shaped, giving the appearance that they were backwards. It was covered in black fur with silver tips. Its head was oversized with an elongated, pointed muzzle. It was muscular and about 7 feet tall. She said there was no way that it could be a person in the suit. And there it was, standing there, staring right at them. Hunched and aggressive, ears pointed back, arms bent at the elbow. She's quoted as saying, "This wasn't a dog, or a wolf. It had canine features, but it was something else. Something other. It was canid. There was this feeling that we were not safe, and we didn't get a picture, although we had cameras all over that car. Video, digital, disposal. We were prepared, but when we saw it, we all just screamed in unison and I floored it." In 2004, in November, a paint contractor in Washington County witnessed the dogman step out of the bushes as he drove down Highway 60 near Slinger Road. It was about 100 to 150 feet away from him at first, and it took about 5 seconds for it to cross the highway. It looked at him as it kept running. The top of its back was as high as a deer. It had long tufts of fur coming out of its chest and legs, a short snout, and pointed ears on the top of a rounded head. He guessed its weight at about 150 to 200 pounds. The legs were more like a bear's, with the animal running flat-footed and lumbering from side to side. The fur was dark brown with a 3-inch or so tail. The dogman entered the bushes on the other side of the road and disappeared. The man slowed down but didn't stop and get out. He described it as the biggest animal that he has ever seen. In 2006, the experiences continued. One of the more infamous and popular encounters happened to a man named Steve Kruger, who was contracted to drive up and down the roads, loading up roadkill from the highways. On November 9th, about 1:30 a.m., he was out like normal and saw the carcass of a deer on the side of the road. He guesses it was about 70 or 80 pounds and was a pretty fresh kill, since the animal was still limp. He hoisted the deer into the bed of his truck and left the tailgate down while he went to the cab to make notes. The first thing he felt was the truck shake. He wrote it off as the wind. But the truck shook more violently a second time, and he looked in the rearview mirror and saw something he never imagined was real. The dogman was standing on the ground, pulling the carcass from the bed of the truck. Kruger was momentarily frozen, but then he threw the truck into drive and took off. As he sped off, he realized that not only had the beast of Bray Road pulled the deer from the bed of his truck, but it also pulled the ramp that he used for larger kills right off of the bed too. He needed that ramp, and he decided that he had to go back and find it. But when he returned, the ramp and the deer were nowhere to be found. He admits he only stayed out of his cab for about 2 seconds though. He continued on his route until 4:30 a.m., unable to get the sighting out of his head. Should he report it? Would he be made fun of if he did? Disregarding his own reputation, he decided that he had to tell the sheriff that this thing was too big and too dangerous to keep a secret. He was careful not to use any words like Bigfoot, or Dogman, or Werewolf, though. Kruger said he stared at this thing for about 5 seconds before getting the hell out of there. He said it had pointed, triangular-shaped ears, and they looked like big wolf ears standing on the end. That was the main feature that made him realize it wasn't a bear. It had a longer muzzle than a black bear, and its head was more wolf-like than a bear. It also looked like a very large black bear standing on its feet. If you took a wolf's head and enlarged it and set it on a bear's body, that's what you'd be looking at. Kruger puts the creature's height at 6 to 7 feet, but he only saw the chest, shoulders, and head of this creature. The fur was about 2 inches long, black and fairly smooth. I know it wasn't a Bigfoot, he said. And then also, in 2006, 2 co-workers driving in 2 different cars saw a large canine-like creature run across the road in front of them. This time, the creature was using both back legs and one front leg, almost as if it was hurt. The first driver said it was large enough for her to see over the hood of her SUV. It was shaggy and matted with dark fur and a lean body. The driver of the second vehicle described the exact same thing. 2 more men saw this creature in 2006 at about 8:30 p.m. The creature was the size of a deer and was crossing the road in front of them, but what they were looking at was not a deer at all. It was muscular and furry with the head of a wolf, too lean to be a bear but too big to be a wolf. It showed no worries that someone was approaching it and continued to walk the road. The driver stopped to get a good look for prints, but there was nothing there, and the creature was already gone. A 4th encounter happened in 2006. 2 boys saw a hairy monster in the woods in their backyard. At first glance, they assumed it was a fox, but the closer they got to the creature, they realized it was just too big. Whatever it was had shaggy, unkempt black and gray fur. He said, when it turned to look at me, it had the most hideous and evil-looking triangular face that I've ever seen. He said it was larger than a German Shepherd, but with a lower center of gravity. He was only about 30 feet away from it around 2 p.m. in broad daylight. He said the tail was quite long and bushy. The ears were small and triangular. The eyes looked right through him. When the creature looked at him, a chill went right through his spine, and he said, I'd never seen something look so evil. I cannot say it was a snarl. The teeth were very, very plentiful and visible. That's the key, the teeth. That's what was so astonishing and noteworthy to me. There were so many teeth. In 2006, yet another encounter happened, east of Powers Lake in Kenosha County, Wisconsin. An airport employee has seen the beast of Bray Road 3 times now along the same 3 to 6 mile stretch of road. Once it was crouching in a ditch and rose up like a man would do with his arms at his sides. He has seen it on all 4 legs and 2 legs. He guesses it's about 5 feet long on all 4s, with its back at least 3 feet off the ground. It has yellow, glowing eyes and doesn't show one bit of fear when they see each other. So where did this beast come from? The same place as the others? What do they all want? Is it as evil as some of the witnesses describe it, or are they just caught up in the moment of seeing something that shouldn't exist? Something unnatural has definitely staked out Bray Road and the surrounding area as its territory. There's just too many witnesses stretching across too many decades for it to be a case of mistaken identity. Sure, now it's part of local customs, but it had to originate somewhere. And with so many different types of people seeing this creature, to me that's proof that there's something out there that we have yet to figure out. If it is a hoax, it's an elaborate one. If it's a man in a suit, it's the most realistic looking costume the world has ever seen. Add in the fact that these creatures aren't just reported around Elkhorn, but all over the world, and it would have to be one of the most organized and thought out hoaxes in history. The Michigan Dogman, the Beast of the Land Between the Lakes, the Wolfman of Chestnut Mountain, all of those are just a few popular Dogman legends. The residents of places like Elkhorn, Wexford County, Taylor, Mississippi, Germantown, Ohio, and all of those places in Kentucky are certain of what they've encountered. Unfortunately, until undeniable proof is brought forward to the world, the Beast of Bray Road and his friends around the world will be shrouded in mystery and argued to be nothing more than legends passed from generation to generation. But for some people that have encountered the beast, and the people that don't need this undeniable proof, the The Dogman is out there. It's waiting for another chance to scare you, to chase you, or possibly even kill you. My advice, don't go looking for the creature yourself. You never know what you're going to run into. Because the next thing we talk about is more aggressive than either of these other two Dogmen. The beast of the land between the lakes has a reputation of being a killer. These are the accounts now of the beast of the land between the lakes. As far as the land between the lakes goes, this place seems to be more sinister than the other spots in Michigan and Wisconsin. The Dogman or Dogmen that inhabit this area of Kentucky seem to be more aggressive than most Dogman encounters that I've read about. It seems this particular specimen is more prone to attacking and even killing people that have the misfortune of coming across it. In appearance, it's the same as the others, having been said to look like a gigantic half-man and half-wolf hybrid that walks around on two legs. It has the five-fingered hands that end in massive claws. It's covered in shaggy hair that ranges from blackish gray to brownish tan, and stands over 7 feet tall, with a wolf's head and big sharp teeth in a powerful jaw that can crush bone. This beast is also said to have glowing red or yellow eyes. He comes with the stink that the other Dogman do too. That combination of rot and blood and dirty fur. He also terrifies unfortunate souls that come across him with a blood-chilling and vicious howl that can be heard from far away. Stories and tales of encounters with the beast of the land between the lakes goes back for a couple hundred years, dating all the way back to the 1800s where French trappers and European settlers came to the land to start a new life. What all the legends agree on, though, is this beast has a taste for human flesh. Of course, there's plenty of ideas as to what this creature could be. The Shawnee tribe think it's the spirit of a shaman that was powerful enough to become a shapeshifter. They believe that while he was in his wolf form, he was killed and vowed revenge against anyone that wronged him. This gave him the ability to turn into the bloodthirsty beast that haunts the lands today. Another legend comes from the 1800s and describes a European man that settled in the land between the lakes before it was established as a national forest by President Kennedy. Apparently, he had a disease that would make him go crazy, but only after nightfall. Because this disease was genetic, it was passed on to his children, who passed it on to their children. They became so savage at night that they lived in seclusion in the forest and refused to ever come into contact with the outside world. When French trappers explored the area, they were some of the first people to describe the huge loup-garou that stalked them from the shadows of the forest once the sun went down. They would describe big game and livestock being butchered by this creature. The trappers would find bisons with their throats ripped out, and these huge creatures would be half-eaten. And they wondered what kind of creature could take down something as big and powerful as the mighty bison. Legend has it that some of these trappers would even go into the forest and never return. And settlers were afraid that it was the beast that was killing their cattle and stalking them from the darkness of the night. Even back then, the description of this monster remained the same as it does today. A terrible, large, two-legged wolf covered in hair with glowing red eyes. The settlers would also describe a horrible shriek that would echo through the night. It's not just back then that the sightings of the land between the lakes monster has been told. These sightings have happened all the way up until modern times. Animals are still being attacked by some big predatory animal, including horses, pigs, cows, even animals like dogs, plucked right out of their own yards. It seems nothing is safe from the beast, and these poor creatures are usually found shredded, mauled, eviscerated, and even dismembered. In 1973, a group of students were camping, and they encountered what they described as a large werewolf-type creature. Of course, they were camping in the land between the lakes when they had the unfortunate disposition. Well, they camped in the LBL. One of the campers went off by himself to answer nature's call, and was gone for a longer period than his friends thought he should be. As they started to worry about him and call his name, he appeared out of the woods as pale as a ghost, visibly terrified. He told them that he had heard some kind of large animal in the shadows, and that it was breathing hard. It was extremely close to him, and he had the same feeling of foreboding and fear that so many other people describe. He said he felt like something was watching him from the darkness of the forest, and that he knew he had to get out of there as soon as possible. It wasn't too long after his encounter that night that the other people in his group heard a loud crashing through the bushes, and it was obvious to them that something big was circling their campsite. They couldn't see anything at the time, but were terrified nonetheless. And then that unearthly howl ripped through the night. It was like nothing any of them could ever describe. And when they saw the same pair of burning red eyes staring at them, the entire group of campers took off to the Volkswagen and got the hell out of there. But that wasn't the end of their terror. Whatever was out there chased them down and actually grabbed the back of the van, strong enough to stop the van in its tracks. Luckily, though, the driver managed to get away from this monster, and they rode back to their campus in a daze of silent fear. When they were finally able to get out of the vehicle, they all noticed how badly damaged the backside of the van was. There were deep gashes and missing metal right in the area where they were sure the beast had grabbed them. Another time, a man had a close-up encounter with the beast of the land between the lakes as he was putting his animals away in their stables. It was already dark that night, and the beast jumped out of one of the stables, scaring him half to death. This creature appeared ready to attack, but to his fortune, it only howled at him and ran back into the shadows of the night. Another eyewitness has never seen the creature. Another eyewitness has never had visual confirmation of what he fears is out there, but he admits that he does believe that the legends are true because of the noises that he hears outside at night. He describes these noises as shrieks, deeper, longer, and stronger sounding than what could come from any regular animal. In 1978, Jan Thomas reported that her cousin was actually attacked by the beast during the day while he was on his dirt bike. While she and another cousin were just sitting outside of their house, listening to Joe's dirt bike as he rode around in the forest, they soon heard his bike speed up, and then he burst from the trees, barreling towards them with a completely terrified look on his face. When he reached the other two, they could see the fear on his face and asked what happened. He pointed to the tree line, and the two cousins looked in the direction that he was pointing. It was at that point that the dogs of the house started going crazy by barking and whining. These dogs actually tried digging their way out of their pen in an effort to get to safety. Joe had worked himself up into such a fearful frenzy that he was babbling and could only say things like, "It grabbed me, look at my leg." When they inspected his pants, they did find that they were torn, and they could see fresh blood coming from what looked like claw marks on the wound on his leg. He had told them that this creature was on two legs and had followed him through the woods along the path from the old sawmill where he was riding his dirt bike around. He described the creature as very hairy with a long snout, repeating every few sentences that what he saw was walking on two legs and even ran on two legs. Jan said she could actually see the pulse beating through the skin where her cousin's temples were because he was hyperventilating and freaking out so badly. The three of them were able to hear that horrible howl of the beast of the land between the lakes, and Jan described it as a nightmarish intensity that invoked a profoundly deep sense of heavy dread. Once the howl ripped through the air, the dogs started shaking in fear and staring at the forest, waiting for whatever it was out there to make itself known. And it didn't take long for that expectation to be met, because from the tree line, the beast of the land between the lakes appeared walking on two legs, just as Jane's cousin had told them that it would. They collectively described this creature as a huge hairy wolf, and Jen was adamant that this was not a Sasquatch, because the snout was way too long. This was definitely something else. Once they caught sight of this beast, the three of them ran into the house, locking the doors and grabbing whatever they could to defend themselves with. They ended up with kitchen knives and hiding under the bed, listening in terror as that beast moved around outside of their house. The dogs outside were crazed at this point, barking ferociously at whatever this beast was. And then one of the upstairs windows shattered. The beast never entered their home for some reason though, but it did cause a significant amount of fear to Jan and her cousins. Once Jan's aunt came home, the beast apparently fled back into the shadows of the forest. It seems nowadays that even hunters tend to shy away from this area where the beast is supposed to roam, and warn people that do choose to hunt there to be careful and always keep a watchful eye out for anything that might lead to certain death. Over the course of these long years of sightings, tufts of hair have been found, Footprints have even been discovered, and people have found what appear to be large dens or nests that look like they house large animals. Nothing has ever come from the evidence collected, though. Fishermen and boaters, campers, even Boy Scouts have all seen the beast of the LBL at one time or another. Grotesque remains of animals have been found that were ripped apart, and hikers have said that they saw glimpses of a beast following them through the forest, but always being able to hide itself among the trees. It even seems like today, bison are still being affected by this beast too. There's a great effort in the state of Kentucky to bring the bison back from the brink of extinction, and every once in a while, the park rangers in charge of this protection find a calf has gone missing. The bison herds seem to be on edge for days after these disappearances too. They're obviously scared of something, and these poor animals will huddle close together in a protective formation, like they're trying to fend off some kind of predatory animal. One eyewitness described the creature that he saw as a werewolf and had spoken about his encounter, stating he believed werewolves were fake until he saw one summer. It was around dusk, and he had already settled in, but the light was still enough to see. All of a sudden, his friend burst in yelling about something in a neighboring field. They decided to go and follow this creature, the friend wanting to entertain the idea that there might be some kind of creature out there, and they followed each other out to a nearby field. They walked about half a mile and didn't see anything. His testimony states, "I wanted to go back, but he insisted. I reluctantly followed, and just before we got to an old slaughtering house, I saw a rather large canine about 70 feet away. It was sitting on its haunches, and I thought it was a big dog until it got up on two legs and ran to the old slaughtering house. Both of us thought it was a good idea to head for the hills at this point, so we ran back to my house. It followed us. By then it was dark, so we decided to retreat inside and lock up. Then this smell that was so foul and terrible I can only compare it to rotting human flesh hit us. It ran in front of us, about 30 feet away. I estimate its height to be about 7.5 feet tall. We bolted into the house and stayed there the rest of the night, but the dogs in the neighborhood would not stop barking. We went outside in the morning, but that smell still lingered. The smell stayed there for 3 days, and on the night of the third day, the sound of a window being forced out woke me up. I grabbed a knife and investigated. I found that a large window pane had been forced out without breaking the glass. After that, the smell disappeared, and we haven't seen it since. There's no explanation for the animal, and there's no evidence, so I didn't post or say anything until now. I live near the LBL, and people tell stories like this all the time. And of course, if anybody's familiar with the beast of the land between the lakes, you know about the most infamous report of the beast and the gruesome discovery that was found in the forest in the 80s. According to a woman that came forth with this story, which she swore to be true, she was told by 2 police officers that she had befriended that there was a family who'd been found ripped apart while they were camping in the land between the lakes. Apparently, their camper had been attacked by the beast of the land between the lakes, and both parents were found shredded in their blood-soaked camper. As the police and wildlife officials continued their search, they found the body of this couple's young daughter that was half-eaten and up in a tree. In my 20th episode, I go into depth about this situation, and I'll put the link below in the description. According to the story, saliva and hair samples were taken from that grisly scene in hopes to identify what type of animal could be responsible for such a brutal attack, and supposedly, these samples came back as an unidentifiable species related to a wolf. While doing my research on the LBL to present to you, I actually found a story that I wasn't familiar with that actually sounds quite similar to the LBL massacre. If true, it's a story of a man named Roger who claims to be the sole survivor of another Dogman attack. It takes place about an hour before sunset. Roger was with another family of 4 for a vacation. They drove a motorhome with their vehicle towed behind it. The family he was with consisted of a mother and father named Diane and Levi, and their 2 children, Connie and Stephen. While Diane and Connie napped, Levi and Stephen were sent to collect firewood, and during this, Roger was getting a shotgun ready for target practice. All of a sudden, Roger hears Levi and Stephen running back from the woods shouting in fear. Roger looked out the window to see what was going on, and sees Levi pull a shotgun from his truck. At this point, Stephen is being attacked by the beast that Roger described as a black hairy creature. Levi fires a shotgun and wounds the beast, but not before it kills Stephen, who falls to the ground in a bloody heap. Apparently, the shotgun blast wasn't enough to kill this creature, though. The beast then proceeds to sprint to Levi and maul him to death as well, then rushes at Roger, who shoots it at a closer range and hits it in the shoulder and neck area. The beast screams and runs around the back of the camper, seemingly into the woods. Roger tries to get Connie and Diane out of the camper so they can hide underneath it until someone comes to help them, but the girls did not follow him. He managed to hide above the drive shaft of the camper just before the beast returned, and he could hear it attack Diane and Connie as well. Apparently, the beast went right through the rear window after he smashed out the glass, and Roger could feel the camper rocking back and forth violently as the beast killed the two of them too. He's understandably quite petrified at this point, having witnessed this entire family being ripped apart by a monster, and waits until he's sure everything is quiet to move from his hiding spot. When he gets out, he can see the bodies of Stephen and Levi, and makes a run for it. As he's running down the main road for all he's worth, a farmer happens upon him and takes him back to his house to call the police. What happens next is two agents from some unknown organization come to the house and take Roger back to the site where the beast attacked. Once there, he sees the entire area is full of other agents investigating the area. An agent that seems to have authority over the other ones speaks with Roger, asking him what happened and to describe what the attack was. Another of the agents calls for help at this point, and they discover a large bipedal beast high up in a tree, dead from a shotgun blast, having bled out. Once again, all of these encounters that you hear are definitely pointing to something being out there in the shadows, in the land between the lakes, just like there is in Elkhorn and Wexford County. But, unlike either of those other two places, the land between the lakes also seems to be rife with other types of paranormal activity, not just limited to the Dogman that terrorizes people in the forest. Even though it seems peaceful at first look, there are hundreds of witnesses describing other types of paranormal activity, including ghosts, witches, vampires, specters, and even phantom lights. In the summer of 2009, a woman told her tale of being followed by some strange light on her way to her parents' house. She described her encounter as 1 second the light would be right behind her, almost on her bumper, and another second it'd be a mile back. Then it would be on her bumper again and then simply disappear. This phantom light followed her for about 10 miles, and she was so scared she called her dad and had him wait outside for her to arrive at the house. The light seemed to follow her all the way to the house, but when she finally arrived and took a look back, nothing was behind her, and the night was still. She isn't the only one that encountered this type of phantom light either. Even though the location differs from story to story, most of the descriptions of the phantom light stay the same. The light follows you, but the distance between it and yourself changes in unexplainable ways, and then in the next instant it disappears completely. The prominent theory out there seems to be that it was the ghost of a trucker that died in an accident, and now this phantom truck follows unsuspecting motorists through the land between the lakes. There's also a phenomenon in the LBL that seems to have everyday, normal people overcome with a sense of intense fear for no good reason at all. In an example of this, a man and his wife were camping on the northeast side of the LBL. They pitched their tent on a hill while their friends camped down by the shore. During the day, everything seemed fine, but once night fell, an overwhelming fear gripped that man that he couldn't shake. He was panicked, and he suddenly had the urge to move the tent, but couldn't explain why. He described it as a feeling of someone or something being there with them and watching them, and that they weren't alone. Not too soon after this, his friends actually went to the land between the lakes as well and experienced the exact same thing. This time, 3 people were there camping, and at the exact same moment, all 3 of them were overcome with a feeling of dread that something evil was there with them as they sat around their campfire. The whole situation was so terrifying that the campers even burst out into tears. To their horror, they noticed a face peering back at them through the darkness of the forest, and they quickly got up and left as soon as they could. That type of phenomenon actually reminds me of a story that I once presented of Lake Moreno, where the same situation happened. During the day, everything was fine, but at night, the atmosphere changed into this terrifying landscape that couldn't be explained. Even though those are the two prominent things that happen, there's also been sightings of ghosts of Civil War soldiers and slaves. They've been seen for decades, and there's also rumors of graves being flooded to make more water area, which also creates the belief that many of the spirits seen in the forest are manifestations of the angry spirits that were displaced. The land between the lakes itself is a national recreational area in Kentucky and Tennessee that sits between Lake Barkley and Kentucky Lake. It stretches over 170,000 acres and was formed by President Kennedy in 1993. There's over 300 miles of shoreline and hundreds of miles of hiking trails. And this area is actually a refuge for endangered animals like the red wolf and the bald eagle. But with so much open land comes the probability that there's some kind of unknown species that's roaming that land as well. It has all the room in the world to roam and search and hunt. So in my opinion at least, this is the perfect grounds for a creature like this to establish its territory. Even with all these encounters stretching across the entire United States, South America, Canada, all of Europe, Asia, Africa, even Australia, Dogman remains a mystery. A cryptid that has no definitive proof other than those that have come forward with their testimonies. Unfortunately, those testimonies are not solid proof in the eyes of skeptics or scientists, and they will continue to deny the existence of these creatures until one is either captured, killed, or recorded with verifiable proof. Most pictures or video are blurry or grainy at best, and the ones that are clear are still brushed off as a hoax. Tribes around Lake Michigan told stories of wolfmen long before anyone else talked about the Dogman, even further back than the lumberjacks in Wexford. The ancient Egyptians worshipped Anubis, a god with the body of a man and the head of a jackal. The Creole people of Louisiana talked about the loup-garou, a beast with the head of a wolf and the body of a man. The ancient Greeks told the tale of King Lycon, a man cursed by Zeus and transformed into a wolf. To me, it seems the world has always been fascinated by the myth of the werewolf in one form or another. But are these tales truly a myth? I'm not so sure. I've talked to too many people that have credible stories of the Dogman. Even with so little to go on, there are still people out there that swear on the existence of Dogman and other cryptids that seem to be just out of our grasp. There are so many channels like mine that are dedicated to the truth of these creatures that more and more people are exposed to these stories every day, making sure that the encounters and the legends live on. Perhaps one day, one of the people listening can bring forth the evidence that we need to prove to the scientific community that these claims are in fact a solid truth. Maybe one day, one of the eyewitnesses that come into contact with us will give us proof that will spearhead textbooks being rewritten. Even as hard as it is to gather evidence, find eyewitnesses willing to put their names and reputations on the line by coming forward and trying to prove these creatures are real. Some of us continue to hunt for the proof that will bring these animals to light. Researchers like the Cloaked Hedgehog and Jody Cook continue to create intricate databanks where we can actually access hundreds of sightings, maybe even discovering migration routes or when these sightings are most likely to occur. There are still so many places with untouched wilderness in this world that we have yet to venture into. Maybe one of these places holds the hidden forest or an unknown cave system that Dogman calls home. They have to go somewhere after an encounter, right? Perhaps they can locate places we can't, or maybe they really do slip off into some other dimension or a reality parallel to our own. Maybe one day we can touch upon them and see the Dogman in what could be its natural habitat. For now, though, the Dogman is one of the mysteries of the universe, a reminder that we don't know everything, and that our place in that universe might be a tiny little speck in the grand scheme of existence. I've said it numerous times, it's even the driving plot of the novels that I write, that there are places in this world where the veil that separates our world from the next is thinner. Maybe these creatures have the ability to cross that veil. I would also like to take the opportunity to give credit to Linda Godfrey, and remember her as the first researcher of the Dogman phenomenon. She's the one that brought this cryptid into the light. Because of her, We're familiar with this creature now. She really was the undisputed leader of the pack on this subject. In fact, most of the things I've learned about for this report are solely because of her. She was investigating the Dogman phenomenon since 1991. She believed the people that contacted her were truthful, but she hasn't seen one herself, so she couldn't ever truly claim that they exist. This one's for her memory. I appreciate everything that she did for us, and I hope that she's resting in peace. Before she passed away, she did offer this though, that there are casts out there of canine footprints that are over 6 inches in length and width, which is way bigger than a timber wolf. So something out there with a canine-like footprint is definitely walking around. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation of Dogman, and keep searching for the truth. It is out there somewhere. And remember, creatures of the night, don't miss your chance to scream. Nighty-night, and happy Halloween.